There's a man, right now, flipping some suspiciously charred hot dogs on my patio grill. I don't know his name. He's wearing my favorite apron, the one I save for special occasions, and he just had the nerve to ask if I had any fancy aioli, because, quote, Dijon is a rookie move. Behind him, 3 kids are launching themselves into my pool like human cannonballs. A woman is rinsing off a gigantic golden retriever using my brand new garden hose. And someone has parked their rusty old sedan smack in the middle of my perfectly manicured lawn. And all of this is happening on my property, my private, fenced-in, deeded backyard that I literally just paid off a huge chunk of my savings for. My brain just stalled, you know? At first, I thought maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I had accidentally agreed to some wild commune retreat in my sleep, but then I saw her. I call her Penelope. Clipboard Penelope, the self-appointed high priestess of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. She was standing by my rose bushes, oversized khaki capris and sunglasses firmly in place, clipboard in hand, commanding the chaos like some sort of suburban drill sergeant. She was walking around like she owned the entire place, which is particularly hilarious because, last I checked, her house was 5 doors down and nowhere near the utter disaster she was actively orchestrating on my private turf. That's when it hit me, that cold, furious realization. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated, full-blown, intentional land grab. And if Penelope wanted a war over territory, she had just picked the absolutely wrong engineer with the wrong backyard. It all started about 3 months earlier, when I moved into what was supposed to be my quiet haven. I'm a software engineer, which essentially means I spend my days coding and talking to people in 3 time zones while wearing gym shorts. All I wanted was a peaceful, high-speed internet spot with enough yard for a smoker and maybe a hammock. This house backed up to a beautiful, quiet green belt. It was perfect. Until I met Penelope Vance. She showed up on my porch the day the movers left, clutching a 10-page, Welcome to Willow Creek, packet that read more like a legal indictment than a friendly greeting. She had that permanent, slightly pinched expression that screamed suspicion, and a tone that turned every instruction into an accusation. Within the first week, she informed me that lawn decorations could not exceed 4 inches in height unless seasonally sanctioned, whatever that means, and that my trash bins were positioned at an unacceptable angle of visibility from the street. I smiled, nodded, and filed her under, handle with extreme caution. The first few weeks were just minor skirmishes, a few passive-aggressive notes about the height of my petunias. But then came that Saturday. I walked out back to water my beloved succulents, tripped over a massive cooler of beer that definitely wasn't mine, and looked up to see the full-scale invasion. Folding tables, lounging chairs under umbrellas, and the margarita dude plugged into my outdoor outlet. My outlet. I tried to be the voice of calm and reason. I tapped the guy on the shoulder and asked, "Excuse me, but what exactly is going on here?" He gave me a bewildered, friendly smile. "Oh, hey. Penelope said we could use the community space today. Great spot. By the way, nice pool. You must live nearby." I started laughing, a high, manic sound, because if I didn't laugh, I would genuinely scream. I told him this wasn't community space. It was my private, deeded backyard. He blinked, pointed at Penelope, who was holding court by the pool, handing out little plastic cups like a queen dispensing favors. Marching over to her felt like walking into a psychological battlefield. "Penelope," I said, keeping my voice low and even, "why are there dozens of strangers in my private backyard?" She didn't even twitch. "Oh, hi, Jake. Don't be silly. This is the North End Access Greenbelt. It's clearly marked on the HOA's original 1995 property map as a shared utility easement. Didn't you read the handbook?" She gestured dramatically to the crowd, as if she were hosting a neighborhood potluck and I was the awkward guy who forgot the coleslaw. I pulled out my phone and showed her the updated property plat, filed with the city, clearly marking the entire area as my private lot. Her smile was made of steel. "Maps can be misleading, dear. Besides," she tilted her head, a hint of genuine cruelty in her voice, "you weren't using it. We believe in maximizing community resources." I stood there, stunned, surrounded by people who were convinced I was the unreasonable jerk, all because Penelope had manufactured this lie. When I finally found my voice and demanded she get everyone to leave, she told me to chill out and enjoy the sense of community. That's when I knew. This was not a paperwork problem. This was a dominance problem, and it wasn't going to be solved with a polite conversation or a boring legal letter. I briefly considered calling the non-emergency line again. The officer had already warned me that for long-term peace, I'd have to take it up with the HOA, which was laughable, because the HOA was the problem. She wasn't just entitled, she was a genuine menace. I needed something faster, something louder, something that would send an unambiguous message. And that's when the idea, the perfect, glorious, loud idea, hit me. My cousin, Gunnar. Yes, that's his legal nickname. Gunnar is the chaplain for a huge, slightly rowdy, but incredibly organized motorcycle club called the Southern Riders. He and his fiancée, a badass woman named Roxanne, had been desperately looking for a wedding venue, constantly getting turned down for being too much. I knew Gunnar would love my backyard. And if Penelope thought my yard was a public amenity, then I would give her a public event that would burn itself into the memory of Willow Creek forever. I picked up the phone, dialed Gunnar, and before he could even ask how I was, I said, "How would you like to have your biker wedding at my place? Open bar, full live band, and I'll even pay for professional fireworks. Everything included." Gunnar screamed with such pure, unadulterated joy that I had to physically pull the phone away from my ear. "Just name the date, cousin. We'll bring the whole damn family." As I hung up, imagining the look on Penelope's face when 50 custom V-twin engines rumbled past her prize-winning mailbox, I finally felt the sense of calm she had stolen from me return. It was a temporary truce, yes, but I knew the best revenge wasn't just sweet. It was loud, it was legal, and it was absolutely impossible to ignore. Let the HOA try to find me. Let Penelope call the police. She was about to learn the hard way. You do not trespass on a programmer's backyard and expect to walk away unscarred. The preparation was pure chaos and pure genius. Gunnar and Roxanne, who, thankfully, worked in event management for concerts, were a perfect team. Roxanne told me she would handle all the permits, the rental equipment, and the catering. "You just keep your yard open, Jake," she said, her voice electric. "And make sure your neighbors know they are welcome, unless they're on the HOA board, in which case, they can watch from behind their blackout curtains. Revenge," she concluded, "is best served with a massive sound system." In just 3 days, my quiet greenbelt transformed into something out of a rock festival. Roxanne brought in a crew that was shockingly efficient. We had giant, black iron candelabras hanging from strings of fairy lights, a massive stage complete with sound equipment, and a light rig that pulsed different colors during the sound check, and a custom arch shaped like 2 intertwined chrome motorcycle exhaust pipes for the vows. I watched it all go up, sipping my coffee like a man about to commit the most satisfying act of neighborhood insurrection imaginable. The immediate neighbors were predictably curious. Some peeked nervously over their fences. A few, the cool ones who were also tired of Penelope, came by to ask what was happening. I told them honestly, biker wedding, live music, professional fireworks. Some raised their eyebrows, but others laughed and asked if they could attend. I said anyone who wasn't currently on the HOA board was more than welcome. Word spread fast. People started bringing lawn chairs and offering to help set up. I hadn't meant to start a movement, but this whole fiasco was quickly becoming the party the neighborhood actually wanted. Penelope made her grand, furious entrance on the 4th day, right as Gunnar's team was unloading 2 massive kegs and a professional drum kit. She stormed across my driveway, weaving between the Harleys like they were high-tech landmines. I was helping Roxanne hang some black and red velvet bunting when I saw her coming, face already flushed. "What in the living hell is going on here, Jake?" she demanded, arms crossed, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. I gave her my most innocent, beatific smile. "Just setting up for a small, private community event, Penelope." "This is not sanctioned by the HOA," she snapped. I nodded slowly. "Good thing it's on my private, deeded property, then, isn't it?" She narrowed her eyes, those permanent suspicion slits visible even behind the dark lenses. "You cannot host public events without board approval. There are safety concerns, noise regulations, and who exactly are these people?" That's when Gunnar stepped in, all 6'4" of him, bearded, heavily tattooed, wearing his leather cut that said Southern Riders Vice President. He extended a hand. "Hi there, ma'am. Name's Gunnar. Groom-to-be. You must be the lady who thinks this man's backyard belongs to everyone." Pleasure to meet the source of our beautiful inspiration. Penelope did not take his hand. She simply recoiled, huffing. This is highly inappropriate. You will cease this immediately. Gunnar turned to me and said, his voice carrying perfectly over the sound check. Hey, Jake, maybe we should move the mechanical bull closer to the street. I want to make sure people driving by know where the real fun is. Penelope's eyes practically twitched out of her head. This will not stand. I am calling an emergency meeting of the board, she hissed. I waved dismissively over my shoulder as she stomped away. Looking forward to it, Penelope. Bring the bylaws. That night, sure enough, I received the notice shoved under my door. Emergency HOA meeting. Mandatory attendance. I showed up early, wearing a plain button-down shirt, armed with documents, a printed copy of my property lines, the city zoning permit for private events, and a fresh, annotated copy of the HOA bylaws. Penelope sat at the head of the folding table like a scorned tyrant. She opened the meeting with a spiraling list of complaints. Noise, unsafe gatherings, improper use of shared space, and a newly invented offense for the mechanical bull. I waited my turn. When she finally finished, I stood up, calmly handed out my documents, and walked them through everything. I own the land. The city approved the event. It's a private wedding, not a public concert. The guest list is curated. And yes, there will be fireworks, but they are fully legal, professionally supervised, and pre-approved by the fire marshal. Any questions? The room went silent. The HOA's bored-looking lawyer cleared his throat. He's legally within his rights, Penelope. She looked like she might actually scream, but the fight was gone. Several other board members actually looked relieved. One man named George, who owned the whimsical Garden Gnomes, whispered to me on his way out. Please tell me the band plays metal. The next day, the final pieces rolled in. Roxanne brought in a catering truck that served tacos and smoked brisket. The mechanical bull arrived, magnificent and inflatable. And then came the ultimate sign of commitment. A beat-up van with the words Pyro King Fireworks painted on the side. Two guys climbed out, wearing matching shirts that said "We make neighbors cry," and began assembling a finale display that looked like a New Year's Eve production. Penelope was spotted that afternoon standing on her roof with binoculars, looking absolutely murderous. The morning of the wedding started not with gentle sunlight, but with the deep, unmistakable rumble of motorcycle engines rolling in like an approaching thunderstorm. I was still making my coffee when the first group arrived. A dozen bikes, flags flying, leather gleaming, lining up along the street like an unstoppable cavalry. Penelope stood frozen on her porch, clutching her pearl necklace, her jaw slack. By noon, the entire block felt transformed. My yard was a full-blown wedding festival. The taco truck was selling out of brunch burritos. The cover band was doing a sound check, blasting a heavy metal version of Here Comes the Bride that, surprisingly, really worked. Gunnar arrived in full gear, flanked by his best men in matching denim vests that read, United by Road, Bound by Love. The ceremony was set for 4. At exactly 4 p.m., the band went silent, and the revving of the engines took over. Each groomsman rode down the aisle on their bike, stopping just short of the altar. Roxanne appeared at the top of the deck stairs, radiant in a white leather dress and a black mesh veil. As she descended, the band played a slow, haunting version of Sweet Child O' Mine. It was perfect. The vows were surprisingly heartfelt. Gunnar promised to always carry extra fuel, both literal and emotional, and Roxanne promised to never complain about oil stains. But of course, Penelope wasn't done. Halfway through the reception, just as the band launched into a surprisingly decent metal cover of a romantic classic, the lights flickered, then died. The music stopped. The DJ's laptop shut down. For a few seconds, there was confused silence. I rushed around the side of the house and found the culprit instantly. Penelope, standing beside the utility box, holding a large, industrial crowbar, a look of grim satisfaction plastered across her face. I warned you, Jake, she said, not flinching. This is a danger to the community. I had to ensure safety. Penelope, I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. You just tampered with private utility infrastructure. That's not petty. That's a felony. I am the HOA president, she barked. I have authority here. You have authority over the height of petunias, I snapped. Not city power grids. That's when the fire marshal, the same one who had offered her a roasted ear of corn, walked up behind me. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "did you physically touch that box?" She looked at him like he was an inconvenience. I had no choice. He looked at the crowbar in her hand and then pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, I have a woman here interfering with electrical infrastructure. Might need a unit." Penelope's eyes finally widened. "Wait, what?" I cut her off. "Everything is recorded, Penelope," I said, pointing to the security camera near the gutter. "Unless you want a police report with your name on it, I suggest you walk back to your house, keep your hands to yourself, and maybe take a long, hard look at what personal boundaries mean." She turned and walked off, her steps far less confident than before. Thankfully, I had planned for sabotage. Within minutes, the massive backup generator I'd rented kicked in. The lights flickered back on, the music resumed, and the crowd cheered like it was the end of a rock concert. Speaking of which, the fireworks came next. At exactly 8:30 p.m., the sky lit up with the first professional blast. Blues, reds, silver bursts that exploded into cascading showers. The crowd gasped and clapped. Penelope made one final, desperate attempt. She marched down the street in her bathrobe, holding a garden hose like a weapon, but as she approached, the fire marshal and 2 police officers, who had been invited and were eating smoked brisket, stepped in her way. One of them held out a plate. "Ma'am, please relax and enjoy the show. We've got this under control." Penelope froze. She looked around and realized no one, not her fellow board members, not the neighbors, not even her own husband, who had quietly slipped away to join the fun, was backing her up. She turned slowly, the hose dragging behind her, and retreated into the night. I stood there, beer in hand, watching the final firework burst into 1,000 gold sparks, and thought, this is the most satisfying day of my life. Penelope had thrown everything she had at me, rules, threats, sabotage, and all she had managed to do was make my party more legendary. She wanted to control everything. Instead, she ended up as a cautionary tale in the best party Willow Creek had ever seen. The morning after felt like the calm after an incredible storm. My backyard was a mess of confetti and empty cups, but Gunner's crew, true to their word, were surprisingly efficient. By 10 a.m., the stage was down, the trash was neatly piled, and someone was power washing my patio. But the peace didn't last long. I'd barely finished my coffee when I heard the crunch of angry footsteps. Penelope was back, her eyes red, waving a thick manila envelope like the sword of justice. Behind her trailed George and Linda, 2 lesser board members. "Jake," she snapped, "we're initiating formal proceedings. Multiple violations. Unauthorized gathering. Illegal signage. Hosting a mechanical bull without board approval." I blinked. "That last one isn't real, Penelope." "It is now," she hissed. But George awkwardly cleared his throat. "Actually, Penelope, the board hasn't officially voted on any of this yet." Penelope rounded on him. "You agreed to back me." "I agreed to attend the meeting," he replied weakly. "Not to declare war." Penelope shoved the envelope into my hand. "Regardless, we've received dozens of complaints. You've tarnished the image of our community." I opened the envelope. It was full of her own poorly cropped Facebook rants and next-door posts. "Penelope," I said calmly, "most of these complaints are just your own posts." But Linda suddenly stepped forward. "Actually," she said, looking at her tablet, "we've also received over 30 emails and voicemails from residents thanking Jake. A few said it was the most fun they've had in years. And someone started a petition to rename the community park Gunner and Roxanne Field. It has 70 signatures so far." Penelope's face went white. She had nothing to say. She turned and stormed off again. At the next HOA meeting, the tide had completely turned. The community was done with her tyranny. I presented my final case, ending with a video montage of the wedding and the footage of Penelope cutting the power. The vote to remove her as HOA president passed with an overwhelming majority. And the twist? The woman nominated to replace her was Roxanne. She and Gunner loved the neighborhood so much they had bought a house 2 streets over. Roxanne laughed when someone suggested it, and then agreed. "Honestly," she said, "after planning that wedding, running a neighborhood will be easy." Penelope left the meeting in stunned silence. Her reign was over. In the following weeks, things changed completely. Roxanne eliminated half of Penelope's ridiculous rules. Decorative frogs were now fully allowed. My yard remained my yard, but but now it was affectionately called the venue. Penelope went completely quiet. No one saw her for weeks. Then, one day, a moving truck showed up. She left no forwarding address, just a single, handwritten note posted to the community bulletin board that read, "Some people don't appreciate order." Someone, probably George, crossed it out and wrote beneath it, "Some people don't appreciate tyrants." The final, incredible closure came 6 months later. I received an envelope in the mail, no return address, but the handwriting was tight and angry. Inside was a photocopy of a formal complaint from a different HOA in a different state, Arizona. Penelope had moved to a new gated community and, according to the complaint, had already tried to implement emergency decorative restrictions and filed 6 noise complaints about the local bird population. The best part? The complaint wasn't by her. It was about her. Someone in her new community had found my viral story and sent it to their HOA. Now, they were building a case to remove her from their board, where she had immediately tried to install herself. The letter asked if I had any further footage or history to help them expedite action. I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. I sat down and composed a reply, attaching the wedding video, the HOA vote results, and a personal statement that began with, "Once upon a time, a woman with a clipboard tried to claim my backyard." I clicked send with a level of satisfaction that is truly rare. So here's my question for you guys. When someone tries to manipulate or dominate your personal space, do you go nuclear, fight fire with fire, and throw a party they'll never forget? Or is the quiet, legal route always the smarter path? Let me know in the comments. And if you've got a crazy HOA story of your own, drop it below. Let's hear about your Penelope.